because I did not let this person go in, I tried to stop him from going in. The police arrested me. He said, "That's it, you're under arrest." And he put my hands behind my back and handcuffed me and put me in the police car.
You're under arrest.
What did I do?
All right.
Wow.
I was
Stand
moving.
back. Okay.
Do not go in the house, sir. Do not go in the... I'm not touching him. You need to get the cops off.
Step back and stop. We know what we're doing.
My name is Linda Meade, and I am 70 years old, and I live in Riverview, Florida. And it's in the Tampa Bay area.
Great. How long have you lived out here?
Oh, God, forever. I was born in MacDill Air Force Base and left when I was 2.5 and came back when I was almost 18. So I've lived here since 71.
Wow.
And in Riverview, I've lived for over 40 years.
And what have you done for a living?
A lot of things. I was an accountant. I was exotic bird breeder. I was a regional property manager. I did a lot of accounting work, and I was a business owner for several different businesses.
What kind of businesses?
I had a business called Organic Gender, which was a way to reveal how if a woman was having a boy or a girl at a very early age. I was also CEO of a company called Soldier Water. It went under, but it was a neat little business. And I've been a property management business also.
Nice. Have you managed any of your own property? Are you a homeowner?
Oh, yes, I'm a homeowner, yes. I've had 3 different properties at one time. And the very first property I ever bought was when I was about 25 years old. I bought a house in South Tampa on Himes, and in fact, that's the one that was squatted at about 5 years ago.
Wow. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
I bought the house, I don't even know what year it was, but it was I was about 27 years old when 26, 27 when I bought the house as an investment. It was always going to be a rental house. And the house was my friend. It really actually helped me a whole lot, helped me grow up, gave me some income, and it built equity for me. So about 5 or 6 years ago, I decided I wanted to sell it. I was fixing it up, and I went to see my dad in South Dakota. He was sick at the time, and I went up there and stayed with him for a few days, probably 10 days, I think. I come back on October the 11th, 2019, and I got a letter from a neighbor who had recently moved into the house next to my house in South Tampa, and it was telling me that he thought squatters had moved into my house. He'd sent me pictures of people camping in the backyard. So me and my fiance went over there the next day, early the next morning, called the police. Called them several times, in fact. They said I had to call their non-emergency number. I drove by my house, my rental house, and it was, it had Halloween decorations on it. I didn't know anybody was living there. I'd just been there 2 weeks before. So we had the police come, and they knocked on the door. The people said they had a lease, that they had signed a lease, that somebody had advertised for the house on Craigslist. We come to find out none of that was true at all.
Were you present when the police initially knocked on the door and saw that lease?
They didn't see the lease. I was there when the police knocked on the door. They came out and they said that the lease was on their computer, and they didn't have Wi-Fi, so they couldn't pull it up, they said. I said, I had Wi-Fi on my phone, we can hook it up and pull it up right there. And they said no. The police told them no, we wouldn't do that. They told me it was a civil suit, and I had to go file a complaint with the courts. I couldn't do it that Monday, they said, because that was Columbus Day. I had to wait till Tuesday. I knew if I waited till then, it would be too late. I wanted these people out of the house. They had broken in. I knew they had committed fraud. It was a criminal act, and the police were telling me it was not a criminal act, that it was adverse possession. I've been a property manager for quite a long time, and I knew that the police were not true. It wasn't true. Adverse possession takes several years to do, plus the people have to show that they paid the property taxes, they've taken care of the property, and they've lived there. These people had only been in there for 2-3 days at the most, and they'd taken possession. They were actual meth heads. They had tattoos all over them, which didn't really make any difference that way, but they were definitely meth heads. They had stolen bikes in the back. They had destroyed the property. And that was a Saturday that I went there, and I actually had to leave knowing in my heart that what they'd done was wrong and the police had done nothing at all. And I knew I was going to come back the next day and get them out. I went back home. I did more research just to make sure I had enough backup. And I drafted a letter that I wrote and handed it to all my neighbors that morning, Sunday morning, that were around Himes Avenue, letting them know what was going on, what was going to happen, because come hell or high water, I was going to get them out of my house, no matter what. So we called the police again. My daughter came over and with a drill, and we called the police, told them somebody had broken into our house and we wanted them there. We started drilling out the locks, and the people inside were going, "We're going to call the police, you're not supposed to be here." I said, "Go ahead, call the police." I mean, it was my property, it was my own property, and they thought that they had a right to be there. So the police came, they stopped us. We did drill out the locks. We got the side door opened, and there was confrontation, of course, nothing physical at all. The police, one of the police, it was a policewoman who'd been there the day before. She apparently knew these people, and she was high-fiving them, and they were putting lotion on her hands and her arms, and she was talking to them like they were old friends. I had requested that she not be there on Sunday. She was there anyway. She said I couldn't request what police person was going to be out at my property. So I also requested a supervisor to come out. When you do that, when you request a supervisor to come out, they have to send their superior out right away. So they did. This guy, he told me, he was trying to keep me from going into the house. I wasn't allowed to go into my own house. There was people going in and out with bicycles. It was very obvious that this house was being used as a place to keep stolen bikes or to sell the bikes or to get drugs. And the police were not even affected by that at all. There was also some young kids that were in the house too. And that concerned my daughter and myself. So the supervisor came out, I forget what his name was. He came out and he told me I wasn't allowed to go in the house. He told me that the squatters had rights, that they were under a law called adverse possession, and they could be in the house. And I told him that he was wrong, that adverse possession takes several years to do, and that this is actually a criminal charge, not a civil charge, because they broke into the house. And he told me he'd been with the department for 23 years and he'd been properly trained. And I actually told him he'd been improperly trained, and he was not right. He didn't like that. So the next thing that happened, I think I told somebody was going into the house that was smoking a cigarette, and I told him he couldn't go in because I didn't allow smoking in my house. I just cleaned the whole thing. Needless to say, afterwards I had to clean it all over again, get the smells out. But because I did not let this person go in, I tried to stop him from going in. The police arrested me. He said, "That's it, you're under arrest." And he put my hands behind my back and handcuffed me and put me in the police car. My daughter had videotaped a whole lot of that, and she put it on Facebook later on.
At that moment, did you feel a sense of injustice?
Oh, I knew I was right. I knew I was right, and I knew I wasn't going to be, arrested after that. I knew it would all go away. But everybody else, everybody that I know was telling me, "Oh, it's got to be a civil matter." If it was a civil matter, it would have had to have gone to court. The judge would have given them at least 30 days after we finally went to court, maybe 60 days to move out. They had already threatened my daughter that they were going to destroy my house. And we have that on tape, I believe. that he said, well, we're gonna have a party here tonight. We're gonna destroy this whole thing. So I knew I had to get him out that day. And that's what my plan was, to bound determined to get him out that day. So my son came up at that point, and he called for the supervisor to call his boss, which was the shift commander. And the shift commander came out, and he only wanted to talk to me, not to anybody else involved in there. He wanted to talk to me. He got me out of the car, had them take off the handcuffs. I was in there for probably about an hour with my hands handcuffed behind my back. But he was very nice. He said, we're going to get to the bottom of this. So this was Sunday. So he called the state's attorney's office. They have a hotline. And they looked everything up. He came back to me and said, we're going to order a trespass order on them. And make them get out. They have 30 minutes to get out. So after all of that, I was right. So I felt good about that, but it had put me through a whole lot that day, and my daughter and my fiance. We had been through a whole lot.
Where in the chain of command of the police department did things go wrong? Because you think that they would be introduced to these issues and laws. Were they just generally misinformed, or did it take someone higher up to make that official decision?
I strongly believe that they thought that the original police officers that were there, they really thought that they were in the right. They thought that this was squatters' rights. I mean, this was something new that was happening then. And squatters were going into old houses and stuff like that. My house was definitely an old house, but it was not a run-down house. I'd been planning on selling it, so I've been fixing everything up in it. But it was a combination. It was that the police officer knew these people. They felt that they were doing squatters' rights, which they thought they had some rights. There is no squatters' rights. They broke into the house, and it was also that they were not trained properly. And my daughter and I went to internal affairs afterwards. We gave them the full story. I probably could have sued them. Everybody was saying, you need to sue the police department. I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to make sure that the police officers were properly trained in what the law was, because this was very disturbing to me. A few days later, a news channel got in touch with me, and they did an interview at the house. We actually walked all around the house and found out how they got in and where they got in at. They had broken open a window pane. They'd taken all the things that are around the pane. It was an old window. Taken it out, opened up the window, and actually went inside the house that way. And then they changed the locks. They took all the locks off and changed the locks from the inside.
You think with such a clear indicator that breaking and entering had occurred, that the police would have, investigated the property, seen that, and then taken the correct course of action? Exactly.
That's what we felt too. My daughter and I were we tried to tell them that, this was a criminal action. They had broken into my house. It was a trespass. It was illegal. And they had just kept saying that it was a civil matter. Well, I didn't let it be a civil matter. So in the end, I was right, and it did work out. I got him out of the house that day, that Sunday. I didn't sleep Saturday night. There's no way I could have slept Saturday night at all, because I knew I was right. And when I feel something right in my heart, I have to go with it. That's it.
How has this event emotionally impacted you?
It's given me a little bit of celebrity status on some things. That people know that, they also know that, I'm a very strong-willed person. When I say something, I truly mean it, and I'll fight for whatever the fight is. If it's a good fight, I'm going to be there. That's just the way I am. It made me realize also that I have to have cameras up almost everywhere so you can document. That's the main thing. You need to document. You need to prove who you are. You need to prove that somebody is not doing you right.
How do you think these squatters identified your home as a potential place to break into and live?
So what happened was where the house is in South Tampa, the back of my yard goes out to a field. And on the other side of that field was a big open space with trees and all that. And it was close to MacDill Air Force Base. And squatters were drug addicts and were living in these woods. They were being pushed out of the woods, so they were infiltrating the South Tampa area trying to find homes. There are some older homes that they had broken into. Some were just staying for days. Apparently they'd been looking at my house for about 2 weeks. I was gone for 2 weeks. Before that, I'd been at the house taking care of it. My mom lives in the neighborhood, and she'd been sick, and we'd been staying. My daughter and I had been staying there on and off while we were taking care of my mother. But that was how my neighbor had noticed them going in the backyard. They'd also had an electrical cord hooked up to my house out into a tent or into an old RV or something on the other side of my fence. Then they started creeping in faster and faster. Soon they were camping outside my fence in the backyard. And then they broke in.
When they were living there, how did this impact the community?
It impacted the community quite a bit. The neighbors would not let their children out. They were afraid. They saw the bicycles going up and down the street, people wheeling bicycles up while they were driving a bike, and all sorts of strange looking people coming out of the house. They didn't know they knew that it was always been a rental. And I always tried to keep it very nice, with the people there. They had background checks and everything. So I'd never had any problems in all these years, never had any problems at all. And I think all the neighbors I know they were glad that we did this because they all told me they were. But it was scary. It was very scary for a while, definitely.
All in all, how much did this impact you financially?
Oh, financially, it probably cost me at least 3 to 4 months rent because I couldn't rent it or sell it while I was going through this, and I was emotionally upset about this. Every time I went over to the house, I didn't know if a drug dealer was going to come up or whatever. I didn't want to be there by myself. My daughter, immediately after it happened, she stayed there with another friend of hers because there was too many people coming up to the house. So we didn't know what was going to happen, if they were going to destroy it or what. She stayed there for a little bit, for at least a week or so, and then we put cameras up, and my neighbors had their cameras pointed at the house too, so we could see if anything was going on there. But it was a financial hit, but it was more of an emotional hit for me.
Did they damage the property at all?
They did. I had several things inside the house that they had broken in a fire pit in the back. I don't know why. Some vases and some lamps, and then some other things that they just took and destroyed. Plus, I had to repaint the whole thing again. The whole back room which is a living room. They had bicycles, and you could see the bike marks on the sides of the walls. I had to clean everything up again and repaint everything. It not only smelled, because it smelled like meth. They were cooking stuff in the house, but I guess for my own satisfaction, cleaning it all and painting it all again made that go away inside me.
What advice would you give to homeowners out there who may be going on a vacation, or maybe they're working on a property they plan to rent or sell? What can they do to prevent squatters?
I think one of the best things is to know your neighbors so that they can keep an eye on your property, and if they see anything wrong or anything suspicious going on, they can contact you. Another thing is the cameras. Ring is one of the best ones, I think. They not only have a social network that everybody can see, it's keyed to your phone right away. and any kind of cameras. We've also used, at another property, we've used hunting cameras that, because if we don't have any Wi-Fi at the property, we'll put a camouflage hunting camera up in a tree, pointed at the door, and we've caught people doing things that way too.
Since you were able to get rid of these squatters, has anyone else tried to break in?
No, nobody's tried to break in. I did sell the property in 2 years later in 2021, and it was hard for me to sell. I love that property a whole lot. Like I said, it was basically my friend. It helped me all these years. But my daughter lived there for a while too, and she loved the place. It was a great neighborhood. That's what was so sad. But they haven't had any problems at all since then, since we got rid of those people.
What laws are in place, either then or now, that are protecting squatters?
I don't believe that there are really any squatter rights laws. This is just what people have said and what they believe, you know, what they've been led to believe. Because adverse possession has nothing to do with squatters' rights. Adverse possession actually is for, say, somebody has been living on a property, paying the property tax bills, taking care of the property, and then somebody else comes along and says, I have the deeds of that property, you gotta go. I mean, if it's been 7 years and they've abandoned the property for 7 years and somebody else is taking care of the property, paid the taxes, and done everything else on it, then it's not theirs anymore. Same way with, say your fence is 5 foot over on your neighbor's property, and nobody knows it. But you've been maintaining that, you've been taking care of it, because after a while, it's been so long, it becomes your property. It becomes your property because you've been taking care of it, and the other neighbor hasn't noticed it. So I know there's a little bit more legal work to that, but that's the way the law is. That's what adverse possession means.
Okay, so to your understanding, it's not a legal issue, but rather like a law enforcement problem.
Absolutely, a law enforcement problem, definitely is. It's because if they say it's squatters' rights, it's actually can become a civil matter, and civil means it's not criminal, and that puts all the onus on the property owner themselves, which is really, really sad, because then they have to go to court, and court is going to be not next week, it's probably going to be 2 weeks or 3 weeks from then, and then a judge will give, it's the same thing with an eviction order. He has to evict the people, so he's going to give them 30 days to move out, so they have another 30 days of free rent. So it's not right. It's actually the police not doing their duty and taking a shortcut.
I know Governor Ron DeSantis had recently passed a law to help protect homeowners from squatters. Are you aware of that?
I did hear about it. The law actually reinforces what I was saying, and clearly states that there's not a squatter's right. The squatters do not have rights.
Okay, perfect. Is there anything else you think we're missing from your story here?
If you can make sure that it is that it's a criminal case where they're clearly breaking in, then you don't have then you can get them out. Now there are squatters where, say you have somebody live in your house, and they don't want to move out. You don't have a lease, but they're getting mail at your house. They're a squatter. They can stay there. You have to evict them then. But you've given them permission to be there. You've let them have mail at the house. That is a squatter right there. But not if somebody breaks into your house and you can prove it.
All right, perfect.
Okay.
Linda, thank you so much.
Thank you.